Have you ever noticed how common it is for every generation to basically hate the generation before them? It's a very common thing where essentially the current generation will say, tends to like the generation or think the generation before them is too out of touch, and the generation after them is too crazy, too progressive, too whatever it may be. But how much is that really true? Well, we're about to go over this with Matt Walsh's video, Why Gen Z Doesn't Know How to Be Happy. Hey everyone, my name's Christian Verstappen, and I have a lot to say about many things. Let's get into this. And I should be clear, we're also talking about the concept of laziness, broadly speaking, but we'll see. Fair warning, by the way, I have not actually seen this video, so this will be fun for both of us.
Recently, for the Daily Cancellation, we spent some time dumping on boomers after Jeff Foxworthy tried to blame the younger generations for the existence of participation trophies. And as I pointed out, the boomers label millennials the participation trophy generation, while neglecting to mention that they, the boomers, are the ones who invented participation trophies and gave them out. In fact, the boomers invented almost all of the terrible things that are ripping our society apart. Things like veganism, the internet, the sexual revolution.
So he's just going to go anti-boomer now? Okay. Way to alienate, well, I don't know how much boomers watch are his audience. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. That's more Fox News with Tucker Carlson.
I don't know if boomers actually invented veganism, but I'm blaming them for it anyway. But
wait, hold. Let's go back. Hang on a minute.
Today we're going to the sexual revolution. I don't know if boomers things like veganism, the internet, the sexual revolution. I don't know if boomers actually invented veganism, but I'm blaming them for it anyway.
Oh, veganism. I thought he said BDSM. Like, what the fuck? I don't know where BDSM came from. No, he said veganism. No, those are all good things. Like, I'm sorry, those are all, like, veganism is good for a multitude of reasons. For one, obviously, it helps the planet. I think that, personally, I really only eat, well, I'm on a diet of pretty much just chicken. But I think that the way forward absolutely is veganism. And I think that while it is very difficult to actually properly maintain a vegan diet with the way that our societies and food and all that are currently set up due to our capitalist system, I could go on about this. It's important to also understand that it's a good thing in general to not be, harvesting products from and eating other animals entirely. There's things about the carbon emissions and all this different stuff, right? But sexual revolution based, and same with, what was the last thing he said?
The sexual revolution. I don't know if boomers actually invented veganism, but
it was just those two. And the internet. Well, for one, the internet is how I'm communicating with you guys right now. I've thought about this many times before. I love the internet so much. I literally do not know who I would be without the internet. And I don't know how the world would even be without the internet. But sexual revolution, yeah. Definitely a thing where people basically got to learn that they could just have sex with who they wanted to just because they wanted to. The widespread use of contraception and birth control. Yeah, very good things. Let people do what they want, man.
Blaming them for it anyway. But today we're gonna take the always enjoyable generational blame game and move it over to the younger set this time, Gen Z and millennials.
There's a shocker. The older generation blaming the younger generation. Never seen that before.
My generation, technically. Though from a spiritual and emotional perspective, I'm really more of a disgruntled 85-year-old hermit who lives in a hollowed-out tree in the woods or something.
That I believe.
I don't really identify with my generation. And this Yahoo News article...
Just to be clear, transgenerational is not, and God I hope never will be, a thing.
Reminds me why. Here's the headline.
I know there are discussions on transracialism, which is also fucking dumb. Moving on.
Gen Z and millennials are disrupting the workplace as they're choosing to be jobless rather than work for a company they don't like. Now, there are different ways to be a disruptor. You could be the Elon Musk type of disruptor, doing new and bold things, challenging the powerful institutions.
Yeah, like charging $8 on Twitter for no reason, and whining constantly about people who make fun of him with parody accounts.
Innovating. Or you could be the kind of disruptor who disrupts by standing off to the side like a useless lump and scratching your ass while everyone else gets the work done.
That's not being a disruptor. That's just not doing anything.
Sadly, many in my peer group and younger have chosen the latter course. So the article says, quote, Gen Z and millennials are unique when it comes to demanding a work-life balance. They don't just want flexible work hours and environments. They want to work for companies that align with their own personal beliefs and values. And almost half of Gen Z and millennials would rather be unemployed than unhappy in a job, according to a new study. The career goals of Gen Z and...
I love how he says this like this is a bad thing. Yes, it's good to have a personal stake and value the work that you do. That's a good thing.
Millennials are changing power dynamics in the workplace. Almost 2 in 4 members of younger generations would prefer being unemployed than work in a job they don't like, according to the study. Most of the young people surveyed said they preferred to work at companies that shared their personal values. 2 in 5 Gen Zers and millennials said they would take a lower paying salary if it meant that they were purposefully contributing to society.
Okay, that's actually really, what's the word? Altruistic.
Diversity and inclusion were also important to the survey respondents. 49% of Gen Z and 46% of millennials said that they wouldn't work for a company that didn't make diversity a priority. Priority of Gen Z and millennials is their own happiness. In fact, 56% of Gen Z and 55% of millennials said they would quit a job if it interfered with their personal lives.
That one's a bit tough because all jobs are going to interfere with your personal lives to an extent. I work 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday currently, and that interferes with my personal life. There are many things I'd rather be doing rather than working all day, but you know, it's what I do. What they mean though, more so with their, they want like, decent vacation time and things like people. They want to be treated like human beings, not fucking slaves to the machine.
Now, there's obviously nothing wrong with wanting to work for a company that represents your values. I mean, in principle, that's a very good thing. The problem is in the perverse and stupid value system that so many of these people want companies to align with, as evidenced by their insistence on diversity and inclusion. Aside from value alignment, we're also told that millennials and Gen Z demand a better work-life balance, and that they would rather be unemployed than unhappy at their jobs. And this is where the real problems arise, I think. First of all, if you're a young person today, or even an old person, the balance you should be worried about is not work life, but screen life. We're told that young people don't want work to interfere.
Internet and computers, bad people. That's what this is coming to.
With their personal lives, but almost every waking hour of their personal lives are wasted staring at screens anyway. I could have more respect for the desire for work-life balance if you were going home to be, with your spouse and children, or you were trying to leave yourself time to engage in a productive hobby like woodworking or gardening or something. But the fact is that for many of these people, the lives they're trying to protect from workplace intrusion are hardly lives at all.
No, you couldn't. No. This has always been a thing throughout generations. People complained about the radio. People complained about TV. People complained about all these different things, right? They used to call the TV, and some people still do call television, the boob tube, because the idea was you were sitting there like a boob, like a stupid person, watching TV, and this argument has always existed, and it's never held any actual weight.
There's something quite morbidly ironic.
Also, who gives a fuck what somebody is doing with their free time? God forbid they don't want to fucking slave away and constantly be a cog in the machine. Like, if they're just gonna fucking sit in a room and just stare at the wall, if that's what they want to do, have at it.
About a man screaming that there's more to his life than being a wage slave, only to discover that the only thing he wants to do is scroll through TikTok and binge Netflix. Second, even leaving that issue to the side, the more fundamental problem with the work-life balance idea is that work and life are not two separate things. life is work. It's a symptom of our privilege and entitlement in the modern industrialized West that we can even consider life and work as two distinct categories. Talk to anybody outside of that bubble about their work-life balance, and they'll have no idea what you're even talking about. Because life requires work. Every life is sustained by work. So when the...
To an extent, he's right, but I legitimately have to wonder, what does he mean by work? I mean, look, is it true that our ancestors used to have to work, plowing the fields, building shelter, finding shelter, we used to be a hunter-gatherer species, all these different things, right? Yeah, those things are true, but it's a very different kind of work than the kind of work we're doing today.
The self-righteous millennial...
Also, how many of those other countries he's talking about are doing work and their life is work because of what Western countries like ours have subjugated them to?
Or Gen Zer turns up his nose and says, I'd rather be unemployed than unhappy working. The question is then, who will be doing the work to sustain his existence? Whether you're happy or not, the fact of life is that your life requires work. And if you refuse to do it, somebody else has to. So who's that going to be? Your parents? Johnny Taxpayer next door? Maybe a combination? Whoever it is, if you are not living a life free of the work requirement, nobody can. You are rather living a life where that requirement has been offloaded to somebody else.
Just like we do with other countries.
You've made someone else your slave, in effect. You don't want to be a wage slave, so someone else is going to be your slave. There's nothing noble about that. It's entitled. It's selfish. In fact, it's evil.
I love how the people that talk about this shit are always the people like him who are sitting at it, and I know I'm sitting at a desk in front of a computer and all, in front of a camera and all that. I know yeah, but I also have an actual job that I would love to make this a full-time job in the future. But right now, I do have an actual job that I'm working. But my point is, I love how the people. I also wouldn't make these kind of comments that he's making, but I love the people that make these kind of comments. Oh, like people are so lazy. When it's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, well, look what your job is. I don't know. It's just
the refusal to participate in the difficult aspects of your own life is evil.
No, it isn't evil. It might not be great, but it certainly isn't evil. That's a very loaded term to use. No. Absolutely not. And there are many reasons why people might not want to work or can't work, so to speak, where they might be physically challenged or they might be mentally challenged. Maybe they have depression or something, and it's really fucking difficult for them to even just get out of bed. I say this as somebody, by the way, who doesn't experience any of these things specifically. I might have a bit of anxiety, but I am able to, and always have been able to, bring myself to work every day and all that good stuff. I'm fortunate now where I can work from home, but even if I wasn't, like, I would still work as I have before. I would continue to work, but people that can't work, yeah, sometimes there are people that can't. Maybe they can benefit society in other ways. That's part of the issue too, right? So many people view, benefiting society as what you can provide in the capitalist system, not how you can benefit society in other ways. What about people who are just thinkers, or and philosophers, or people who the reality is, if you can't make money from it under capitalism, it is viewed as something that is not worthy of your time. And if you don't want to do something where, let's be honest, somebody else can't make money off of you, it is viewed as not worthy of anybody's time, and you're basically just a freeloader because you want to do something that's different from what is going to serve the capitalist machine. And you always get people like this talking about it.
It's a shameful thing. Third point, we hear that all of these younger people are prioritizing their happiness, focusing on their happiness, giving up work for the sake of happiness, pursuing happiness, thinking about their happiness, talking about happiness, obsessing over their happiness. And yet, shockingly, so few of them are actually happy. There have never been people who talk so much about happiness and yet feel it so little. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, there are a lot of people who are really starved for a romantic and or sexual relationship, and they talk about it a lot. Isn't that crazy? They don't have it, yet they talk about it a lot. Isn't that wild? Look at fucking incels and people like that, or hell, even myself. I talk about it a lot with friends and family, and on here it'll slip through in a lot of conversations because it's something that I very much desire. People talk about things that they want. What the fuck? The funny thing is, you might find they'll talk about it less if they actually have it.
Millennials and Gen Z are at once the most focused on their happiness and yet also the least happy. Perhaps there's a lesson there which we might consider finally learning at some point. And the lesson is that happiness cannot be conjured out of the ether like a magical spell. You can't will yourself into it. You can't convince yourself to be it. Happiness is a byproduct of a well-ordered, well-situated, grounded, virtuous, productive life.
No. Happiness is a product of you having your needs and desires met. Now, there are chemical things that can go on in your brain that, like I mentioned depression before, that can basically prevent you or make it very difficult for you to be happy. But generally speaking, the concept, the idea, and the practice of being happy is very specifically and explicitly having your needs and desires met. Externally, internally, whatever that may be. The things that I desire that will make me happy might not be the same things that'll make you happy, might not be the same things that'll make Matt Walsh happy, might not be the same things that'll make any specific person happy. For some people, they would be really happy to have a family and pets and the white picket fence lifestyle and all that good stuff. For me, that sounds like a fucking nightmare. I very much want a partner who I can travel the world with and just experience life together with, and we just have a great connection and relationship in general. But I don't fucking want kids or pets at all. People that do, hey, great, that might make them happy. For me, not at all. What defines happiness for you, what your desires are, is going to change from person to person. And as I say about many of these things, all of those are valid. If you want to be someone who, is just working the whole time, fucking by all means, do it. But if you don't need to feel bad because you desire more out of life. Or not even more, but just something different out of life.
That's the only way to achieve sustained happiness. You can find pleasure outside of that. You can, go to a back alley somewhere, buy some black tar heroin and find some pleasure that way, I guess.
This is a really low blow. I just want to be clear. I do not support using hard drugs or anything like that to be happy. Won't make you happy anyway. It'll make you dependent and it'll fuck you up. And if you are on any kind of drugs or have any kind of substance abuse, please see someone for it. I don't really know specifically any places you can go, but definitely see if you can go to a rehab facility and get that taken care of, because it's not good.
You could derive pleasure from an extra large fast food value meal or a $3 hooker, but you won't find happiness any of those places. And you won't find it in a directionless life free of work, free of challenge.
He's conflating happiness, though, with pleasure. I agree that there are fleeting pleasures. When I eat a cookie, that pleasure lasts for as long as the cookie's there and as long as I can taste it in my mouth. But once I swallow it and it's gone, it's not there anymore. If I listen to a good song or watch a good movie, that is there, that pleasure is there until it's over. Maybe it kind of lasts a little bit afterwards. If I have sex with a partner, that pleasure is there in that moment. And yes, you have the afterglow and things like that as well. But yes, that pleasure is fleeting. But having that sustained relationship with that partner can lead to happiness. That movie, that song, all those things are fleeting in that moment. But having those movies, having that artist that you can go to and is going to in some way make you feel good or just be, make you think about things or whatever, that can lead to happiness. There is a value to working hard, and you can achieve happiness that way if that's what you do want. If you want to be a worker in that way, then by all means. But if you don't, you shouldn't be shamed for the fact that you don't want it. Most people are in dead-end jobs that they don't really want to be in. I mean, there's a reason this meme exists. You got the guy who's unhappy driving to work, he's unhappy while at work, and he's unhappy at home. This is from an episode of SpongeBob SquarePants that was made in, 2000, 2001, maybe, something like that. We are now in 2022. Gen Z, my generation even, I was born in 97, I'm just at the start of Gen Z, we were children. There was no way this could have applied to us. Yet it was so understood, even at this time, that this is how a lot of people feel about work and about life in general, in especially corporate America. So Matt Walsh putting forth this thing where this is like a Gen Z problem. No, it fucking isn't. The thing is, Gen Z saw those things and said, oh shit, I don't want my life to be like that. And took action in some way to make it so that their life wouldn't be like that.
Spend staring at screens while somebody else provides for all of your many needs. As it turns out, life and work cannot be severed, and neither can happiness and work. It takes work to be happy. You have to do difficult things. You have to exert yourself. You have to give yourself over to some cause beyond yourself.
All right. If we're talking in the scientific sense of what work is, doing this with my hands right now, this is work. This is physical work that my body is doing. Anything that you do is a form of work. But what people talk about when they say they don't work or they don't want to work or they don't dream of labor or anything like that is really what it comes down to is exploitation. They don't want to do a job that they are unfulfilled by, where they are being exploited by the system. And I mean, yeah, that's really it. But Matt Walsh wants people to be exploited by the system because he benefits from it. And the oil billionaires that give him money to peddle this shit benefit from it as well, his benefactors.
Happiness comes then as a side effect, often when you least expect it, and always when you aren't thinking about it. You simply fulfill your responsibilities, you live your life, you do your work, and one day you look up and you say, wow, look at that, I'm happy. That's how
you can, and I highly recommend being intentional about your life. You can be intentional. You don't have to go through life, and I would recommend not doing this. You don't have to go through life just kind of wandering aimlessly around and just falling into shit. A lot of people live their life that way, especially in terms of relationships. But you can be intentional about these things. You can be intentional about the kind of job that you want, the kind of relationship that you want, the kind of life that you want, who you want to be as a person in general. You can be intentional about those things. You don't have to just aimlessly wander around and do whatever the system tells you to do or some shit like that. But, again, that's what Matt wants.
Happiness works. You only find it when you stop looking for it. This is one of the fundamental facts of life. And it's something that both the Gen Z and millennial generations would do well to learn. Until then, they are, of course, canceled.
I wonder, what is Matt Walsh's age? He's 36. What generation is someone who is 36? Man, I'm going to have to do math. All right, hold up. Where are we? You guys probably can't even see that I'm pulling up a calculator here. All right, 20. He was born in 1986. Oh shit. He is 20. No, I literally just read it. He's 36. He was born in 86. Okay. So, Zennials? What? I mean, I know Gen X. He's a millennial. Sorry, Matt. You yourself are a millennial, bro. I don't know what you're doing going off on Gen Z and millennials because, bro, you're a millennial. But it's not just Matt Walsh that has some things to say about this. Our wonderful Candace Owens had I guess this is a TikTok? No, this is one of those shorts, isn't it? Yeah, shorts right there.
Children work anymore. Now, I know you're interested thinking of Candace because, I don't know, it's a form of slavery to have children work. Children should just be able to enjoy their childhood. But
okay, let's look at the facts. She brought up the slavery argument. She's a black woman. Do we think she's going to play the card? Let's find out.
there is something about working that establishes a better human being. We are not creating better human beings anymore or quality human beings anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like, it just seems that everyone is so entitled to everything. I shared with you many episodes ago the story about the assistant that I had, 22 years old is how old he was, asking to make $135,000 a year after a month of work. Why? Because he's entitled. Because he doesn't even actually know what real work is. You have children that grow.
Candace, how much are you making for doing this?
Grow up to become the adults like they're facing right now at Goldman Sachs that say, we're being abused. Yes, we make, I don't know, almost $100,000 a year, and but we're working long hours, and we shouldn't have to work long hours.
That's true. Crunch and people working really fucking long hours in businesses is cringe and should not be a business practice. I love how one of the things that Candace talked about there was how we are not building better people effectively. And yet, if we look at statistics, we see that crime has gone down. Granted, there was a spike in 2020, but crime has gone down immensely over the generations. We know that things like spousal abuse are much lower than they were before. We know that workplace harassment and many other things are a lot better than they were before. The golden generation that so many people like to pretend existed back in the 50s and 60s had a lot of fucking shitty problems. There are a lot of things that are better today, a lot of ways that people are better today than they were decades ago. There is more to life, more to society, and benefiting it than just work. I mean, when we think about the people that have really made impacts on society, I'm talking really made impacts. We think about the great thinkers. We think about philosophers. We think about theorists. We think about mathematicians. We think about people who what they were doing wasn't like what they're known for, wasn't even actually their career necessarily. There are many ways to benefit society outside of whatever the capitalist machine deems appropriate. But people like Matt Walsh and Candace Owens want you to continue feeding the machine, so they don't want you to question these kind of things. They want you to shut up and to do your job like a good little workhorse and don't complain. When understand that weekends, paid time off, maternity leave, paternity leave, lunch breaks. All of these things are things that people fought for, where they were told they were entitled for even wanting in the first place. Think about the next time you have a paid holiday, the next time you have a weekend, 2 days off, child labor laws. Remember that the same argument being used today is the same argument that was used against the people who fought for those things back then. All the things that we have in the workplace that we take granted for today and we view as it's just a given, like weekends, were not always the case. And if people like Matt Walsh and Candace Owens had their way, they'd have children working factories again, and they'd have you working without a lunch break, without paid vacation, without weekends, without paid holidays, without holidays off in general, without any of it. Because these fuckers do not care about you. They care about what you can provide the system and how you can benefit them directly. The concept of this generation being lazy or the next generation being lazy, because I guarantee you, the next generation, my generation, will be saying they're so lazy, and they'll say all kind of other problems they have with the generation too. But in reality, it's just the way it goes. They're not more lazy. They're more innovative. Each generation is more innovative than the last, and each generation will benefit from innovations that the generation before them had. There's nothing wrong with that. That's progress. That's society. That's how the world works. It's a good thing. And if you're against that, then get off the internet and stop using all of the things that you take for granted today, because all of those were invented by people who were trying to make life easier for other people. As always, these are just my thoughts. Let me know what yours are in the comments down below. Follow me on social media for more. Subscribe and ring the bell to stay up to date. Leave a like if you like, and if not, I hope you find something to do like. Later, guys. Peace and love.